progressives have always been angry. Indignation is their signature emotion. But a year and a half into the Trump administration, their rage has finally consumed them. The left is spinning completely out of control. Just 2 weeks ago, only a few fringe figures called for abolishing border enforcement. Now that's a mainstream view in the Democratic Party. Watch.
ICE has strayed so far from its mission. It's supposed to be here to keep Americans safe, but what it's turned into is frankly a terrorist organization of its own.
We need to rebuild our immigration system from top to bottom, starting by replacing ICE with something that reflects our morality.
Look at ICE. What a group of incompetents. At this point, they're focused more on toddlers than terrorists.
You should get rid of it, start over, reimagine it, and build something that actually works.
Kirsten Gillibrand and Elizabeth Warren are thinking strongly about running for president. They don't take positions lightly. If they're calling for the end of national borders, and that's exactly what they're calling for, they think their party is with them, and they may be right. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is definitely with them. She's the soon-to-be congresswoman from New York's 14th district. She's a self-identified democratic socialist. What does that mean exactly? Well, last week, the New York Democratic Socialists of America issued a statement of their beliefs. Quote, abolish profit, abolish prisons, abolish cash bail, abolish borders. Abolishing prisons in a country with thousands of murders every year? What would that look like? Well, you probably wouldn't stick around to find out. You'd be long gone, along with every other normal, productive person in what was once America, refugees from your own country. Something like that happened in Venezuela. There are people in our country working to make it happen here. And suddenly, some of them are prominent in the Democratic Party. This is getting scary. If you pay attention, it will scare you. You'd think our so-called intellectual leaders would be working to moderate rhetoric like this and guide it in a more responsible direction, but they're not. Instead, those leaders are adding to the cycle of extremism. Consider the reaction to the retirement of Justice Anthony Kennedy. Left-wing law professors at prominent schools are calling for Democrats to expand the number of seats on the Supreme Court and pack it with liberals for a permanent majority. Harvard Law lecturer Ian Samuel wrote that a Supreme Court with 10 liberals and only 5 conservatives would actually be, quote, incredibly generous to the Republicans. Fordham law professor Jed Sugarman agreed with that. If this happened, of course, the court's legitimacy would evaporate overnight, but they don't care. They would have power forever, and that's their goal, their only goal. Of course, Republicans could pack the Supreme Court right now, tonight. They have the power. But everyone knows they won't do that. Only the left is embracing extremism right now. Progressive mobs threaten public figures. Progressive leaders cheer them on. Here's Washington Post writer Jennifer Rubin explaining on MSNBC that Sarah Sanders deserves a, quote, life sentence of harassment from the left for the crime of working for Donald Trump. Watch.
Sarah Huckabee has no right to live a life of no fuss, no muss after lying to the press, after inciting against the press. These people should be made uncomfortable, and I think that's a life sentence, frankly.
She has no right to live a normal life because she disagrees with me. Well, there's nothing liberal about language like that. It is pure authoritarianism. In just the past few weeks, the old Democratic Party has vanished. Bill Clinton could not get elected by today's Democratic Party. He can't even appear at Democratic fundraising events or campaign rallies because they might scream at him, too. In the coming months, we plan to bring you reporting on what the Democratic Party is fast becoming. Nobody else is going to do that. The other channels want to hide the details. They don't want to scare you before Election Day. But we think you have a right to know what's happening. Ricky Jones chairs the Department of Pan-African Studies at the University of Louisville, and he joins us tonight. Professor, thanks for coming on. So,
no problem, Tucker. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure, as always. As part of, I want to lay down markers so we acknowledge that things are changing really fast. So things happen, people make statements that they wouldn't have made even a year ago. And I'm going to refer to a piece that you just wrote last week in the Louisville Courier-Journal in Kentucky, in which you described white Americans as moral monsters. Do you want to live in a world where it's okay for university professors to describe groups of people on the basis of their race as moral monsters? Is that the country that you want to live in?
Well, I think your framing of the question is off. I would encourage people to read the piece. It's only an 800-word piece. so it takes
I would too.
5 to 7 minutes. I didn't call white people moral monsters. Actually, that was the conclusion of the legendary writer James Baldwin. I'm sure some of your viewers are familiar with Baldwin. That was his conclusion after many years in America. And I simply posed the question as to whether or not Baldwin were right when we place some of the behavior along lines of race into historical context. So do I want to
here's,
live
let me quote for the piece. And okay, so I would encourage our viewers also, and that's one of the reasons I wanted you to come on, so people would know what is happening out there beyond their own worlds, and that people like you are writing things like this. And I'm quoting, maybe Baldwin was right when he said we are dealing with moral monsters, i.e. white people. How would you feel about a piece that described black people as moral monsters? You would rightly call that racist, wouldn't you? Why is this not the same?
Well, you're proof texting and changing the argument by doing so. Again, I would encourage your viewers to read the entire piece. I think we've entered into a dangerous
space. Is it okay even to suggest, is it okay to suggest a group of people on the basis of their race are moral monsters? I mean, do you think that a person's race affects his moral standing? One race is better than another? Tell me what you think.
What I think is very important is if people, again, read the piece and look at the world in which we live, and many of the things that we've seen, from the enslavement of people in the country to black codes, to the Civil War, to Reconstruction, to disproportionate incarceration, to a misunderstanding of immigration, and that many people in the country outside of the white race certainly have some feelings that are not positive about their treatment right now.
Well, sure.
I don't.
And you're whipping them. You're abetting race? No, you hold on. Here's your quote from you. Why are so many white Americans so brutally mean and inhumane? If I wrote the sentence, why are so many black Americans so brutally mean and inhumane, which I would never write, how would you respond to that? Wouldn't you say you're a racist, as you clearly are?
No. The first thing that I would do is I would read the piece. And I think, unfortunately, as I talked to your producer this afternoon, I mean, being pugnacious with people like you and I, when we don't know one another, certainly, but we're both Americans, it makes for good television. But it doesn't make for people understanding one another.
I'm quoting your piece. You tell me, hold on, is this quote incorrect? And don't lay this nonsense on me. Why are so many, are these your words? Tell me what you meant by it. Why are so many white Americans? I'm being patient with you, but when you start spinning me, I lose my patience.
I'm going to be patient with you. I'm going to be patient with you and let you ask and answer the questions if you'd like to, but we'll run out of time because television is certainly a short platform. But again, I encourage people to read the piece. Why are so many white Americans so...
You've said that 5 times. Why don't you answer my question, which is, would it be okay for me to write the sentence, why are black Americans so brutally mean and insensitive? If you would, please answer the question.
I'm answering the question. The first thing that I would do, I would not limit myself in a very myopic way to one sentence of a piece. I would endeavor to read the entire piece, which you certainly are intelligent enough to do.
It's 800 words, okay? This is not the Republic here.
It's only
this is
800
an
words.
op-ed. So can you account for one sentence in that piece? Can you just answer my question? If I wrote an 800-word piece in which I said, why are black people so awful and morally deficient, what would you think of that?
I would not think you were a racist, but I would think that you are racially insensitive if you would take a piece and not look at the genesis of that piece and place it into historical and literary context. And do people who are watching your show and reading the piece
with attacking people on the basis of their race, which is so common on the left now? Don't you see yourself as part of the problem, as a driver of race hatred? You don't see that?
No, that's not what the piece does. What I find troubling,
yes, it does do that.
Is I understand many white brothers and sisters may not even be aware of what they're doing. But when people bring the situation to them and they respond in an indignant way, then that raises a question of morality that I think we have to wrestle with.
I'm trying to get a straight answer out of you. My next question is, how much do you make in your sinecure over there at the University of wherever? But you won't answer that, I'm sure. Look, you're not answering my question.
I'm sure I don't make nearly as much as you with the race baiting that you do.
I'm wondering.
I would trade my salary for yours any day.
I would never say something like this about a racist
But you do every day.
I would be ashamed to say something like that.
You do it every day,
and I never would.
You do it in a more cursory way, which doesn't really help the discussion. You know,
cursory?
I mean, so yeah.
All right.
I think we need
Thanks, Professor. Good to see you. All right. Well, not everybody on the left is on board with where the left is going. Some are afraid of where the left is going. And if you just watched the last segment, you ought to be afraid. Brandon Straka has spent years as a liberal. He now says he's concerned by what the left has become. He recently released a new video encouraging other progressives to walk away from the movement. Brandon Straka joins us tonight. Brandon, thank you for coming on.
Thank you,
So
Tucker.
what was the moment? You were a liberal for a long time. You voted for Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
What was the pivot point for you when you decided these people don't represent me and I want something different?
Well, before the election, I was already starting to feel uncomfortable with where we were headed in terms of identity politics and PC culture. I became a liberal because I'm against racism, I'm against sexism, I'm against discrimination because of sexual orientation. But to be on the left now means that you basically have to be hostile towards white people. You have to be hostile towards men. You have to find heteronormativity to be erroneous in some way. So I started to see these cultural shifts happening that I was very uncomfortable with. But a friend of mine came to me and she actually showed me something that pointed out very clearly how dishonest the media was in the Donald Trump campaign. How they would isolate moments from his behavior and make it appear as though he were a racist or a bigot or whatever. Now, I didn't realize this. I thought that CNN told the truth. I thought MSNBC told the truth. I thought Rachel Maddow told the truth. So this was mind-blowing to me. And once I realized this, I sort of went on a quest to find out more and see how much, what other things were they not being honest with me about, which it turns out was quite a lot. And once I discovered this, I tried talking with other people, and I was met with a lot of hostility and contempt. And a lot of friends left, and were very nasty to me on the way out the door. I decided that once and for all, I was going to sit down and write the definitive manifesto about everything that's wrong with liberalism, everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party, and put it in a video and just rip the Band-Aid off and stick it out there. But I wanted to create a campaign because I knew there were other people like me who were feeling the same way. So what I've done is I've created a testimonial campaign utilizing video and written testimonials. This is happening right now on Facebook. It's called the #WalkAway campaign. People are going on there from the left, leaving video testimonials and written testimonials talking about why they're walking away or why they have walked away. But what's even more amazing about it, and even better, is people on the right are participating too. I've given a voice back to the silent majority because now we're cutting out the media who's controlled the narrative of what it means to be a conservative and said it's all racists and bigots. I'm allowing people to tell their own stories and say, I'm not a racist, I'm not a bigot.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Well, good for you, Brandon, because I think